Scanning for audio.
Welcome once again to another Tin Dog podcast. This week's show, I'll be talking about both parts of the Angel stories. That's Smith 1.4 and Smith 1.5, The Time of Angels and Flesh and Stone. This week's episode is dedicated to Robert Coningsburg, who dedicated using the donate button on the Tin Dog podcast main page. I'm aware that you all love me to have a little bit of a rant, and I'm also aware that you're expecting me to rant about a very specific pair of in this podcast. Well, I'm not going to let you down. The first rant, I'll move right up to the beginning of this show and get it over with. You see, at the very end of this episode, the BBC introduced a nice animated trailer. A little man came at the bottom of the screen and waved to tell us, right in the middle of the most dramatic moment of the episode, that Graham Norton was coming on next. Yes, Graham Norton, the man whose voice was responsible for ruining the dramatic tension at the beginning of Rose back in 2005. This man's production team are just wrong. Oh my God. Now, there is an argument that can be made that the BBC only do this to annoy us, to make us buy the DVDs. Look, BBC, we will buy them anyway. Hell, if you released the DVDs before you showed the episode on TV, and why nobody's thought of that is beyond me, we'd buy them then. It would make podcasting a hell of a lot easier. I could just record all 13 episodes in one go and release them over a period of months. I wouldn't have to set foot near a microphone for almost 3 months. Let it go, leave it be. No. Graham Norton's little animated character came on, and the BBC arguments, well, their feedback, not good. Tell you what, rather than have me ranting and saying that there's some sort of conspiracy going on, here's what Charlie Brooker had to say on his show.
Moving on, this is related. There was another great episode of Doctor Who on Saturday. How did the BBC manage to wreck the most important moment of its most important drama?
Did they redesign the Daleks again? That's one of the worst things they've ever done. Those new Daleks are shit.
What have they done to the Daleks?
They've essentially mated the old Daleks with a bendy bus.
Can they get up and down the stairs now?
Yeah.
They've been able to do that for years, Laverne.
Yeah.
They fly now.
They hitch up those skirts. That would be great, wouldn't it?
It's not the colour of the Daleks.
I think, did they put a trail in the programme?
Well, yes, they did. Let's take a look at the most unpleasant intrusion involving a doctor since the Embarrassing Bodies Autumn Proctology Special.
Put my signal.
What signal?
You won't miss it.
Sorry, can I ask again? You mentioned a mistake with me.
Oh, big mistake. Really huge. Didn't anyone ever tell you there's one thing you never put in a trap if you're smart, if you value your continued existence, if you have any plans about seeing tomorrow, there's one thing you never, ever put in a trap.
And what would that be, sir?
Me.
Boo! A heartbreaking scene in which the Doctor was destroyed by his new arch-nemesis, the BBC Trails Department. The BBC went on to ruin the following show, Over the Rainbow, by having Graham Norton on screen for the entire programme.
I thought because I saw people on Twitter talking about it, and I assumed that they'd, cut away to, a BNP party political broadcast or something equally heinous from the way people were talking about it. It was just a little strap.
No, it wasn't just a little... It was a cartoon! Graham Norton wandered over Matt Smith's face during the end of Doctor Who, and it's a travesty! They shouldn't have done it! It's not on! It really isn't on. Genuinely, I mean, it's part of a sinister trend. Sorry, genuinely, it's part of a sinister trend in television that they do that. Our producer was saying that not that long ago he was watching the film The Remains of the Day on 5. It was building to an emotional climax, and just at the end, a little Justin Lee Collins wandered on and flipped a coin to advertise a show called Heads or Tails. And I thought the only way that could be any more inappropriate had been if he'd been watching the end of Sophie's Choice, where she has to decide which child to save. Heads or Tails!
Of course, that wasn't the only show to discuss this sort of thing. BBC TV's Points of View programme, the programme dedicated to all the feedback the BBC apparently get, had this to say. This is the official BBC standpoint on it.
More than 5,500 people phoned the BBC last weekend alone, and our inbox stretched at the seams with the weight of incoming venom. Why? This little fella had the temerity to dance across our screens during the closing minutes of last week's Doctor Who with explosive results.
I've seen these incredibly irritating animated promos popping up on some satellite channels, but never thought the BBC would follow suit. There is nothing that says we have no respect for our audience more than breaking the carefully built tension of a drama with an animated logo that shouts, "Look at me!"
It totally removed me from the moment, spoiled my enjoyment, and put me in a bad mood all night.
It shows contempt for the viewers and the programme itself.
I demand someone from the BBC comes on Points of View to apologise for ruining this episode.
Strong views there, and that is just a tiny selection. So what possessed the marketing department to trespass on Doctor Who, and what is their reaction to the backlash they've caused?
The over-the-rainbow trail in Doctor Who should not have played out on Saturday, and we apologise to all Doctor Who fans whose enjoyment of the show was disrupted. We recognise the strength of feeling that has been expressed, and are taking steps to ensure that this mistake will not happen again.
Good to see them taking all those viewer complaints seriously and actually apologising.
Now that's not a problem, except to say, if they didn't intend showing it then, why does the logo exist? When else could it possibly have been shown? No, it was meant to go there. It was meant to create people talking about Choose Me a Dorothy or whatever the programme's called. Look, we might watch it, we might not, but let us decide. You still said you wouldn't do the credit squeeze. I'm sorry, but you're still doing it now. You've already broken that promise. Now, this only happened in England, not Scotland. So, if you own Sky Plus, you can record 2 TV programmes at once. So why not record Doctor Who broadcast in England and Scotland at the same time, and then whichever one has the least screen clutter, watch that one. And so I won't rant. I will imply that there is slightly more to this conspiracy than meets the eye, but let's face it, we can let it go, can't we? Let's not burn effigies of Norton just yet. The man had the good humour enough to have a Dalek come on and exterminate him animatedly in his own show. Crashing on, why don't we talk about this?
River?
Follow that ship.
Has Dr. Song explained what we're dealing with?
Doctor, what's it going to do to me?
Amy, not the eyes. Look at the angel, but don't look at the eyes.
The angel, as far as we know, is still trapped in the ship. Our mission is to get inside and neutralize it.
Don't you see all that radiation spilling out the drive pan? The crash of the Byzantium wasn't an accident. It was a rescue mission for the angels. We're in the middle of an army.
The statues are advancing on all sides.
There's no way out, no way back, no way out.
I'm about to do something incredibly stupid and dangerous. When I do, jump on my signal.
What signal?
You won't miss it.
Ah yes, Time of the Lovely Shoes, Time of the Angels, a return of River Song, apparently meeting the Doctor out of order, or in reverse. I'm not completely sure it's going to constantly be in reverse, but that's fine. Moffat is the man who coined the phrase timey-wimey after all. The message, "Hello, sweetie," in High Gallifreyan, raised the question that I've often thought about. Is there such a thing as Low Gallifreyan? And if so, does that just appear on bus shelters, done in spray paint? I just don't know the answers. Now, last time when I was talking about Creature from the Pit, I mentioned that Doctor Who was never short of messing about with its own continuity in order to get a cheap gag. Perfect example here, the noise when landing. The nice chime from the 5th Doctor's time. Doom, yes, you've landed. Lovely. Leaving the handbrake on does imply that every other Gallifreyan leaves the handbrake on. Doesn't make sense, but it does get a laugh. Fine by me. And yes, Doctor Who lifts from 1,000 other sources. Yes, this is Aliens, but that's really not a problem, because it's Doctor Who's version of Aliens. It's not just a straight list. It's nice that the character is called Bishop, and is actually a bishop, and is still a soldier. It works. I don't know if it was just me, but the two-headed locals thing we would have spotted, thinking that the other statues were all angels, occurred to us all very early on, and then we just went, perhaps not. But the local architect had two heads. Now my memory may be failing me, but isn't that a reference to the two-headed architect that appeared in Moffat's Curse of the Fatal Death? Yes, it's a great story. It's got great acting. There's very little you can talk about this that would be a negative point. I don't know why the angels send people through time, and the killing of Angel Bob in order to get his voice, well, that's just another tool very similar to the Silence in the Library, where the monsters, who need to get across to the audience, not to the Doctor, their own motivation, need a voice stolen from one of their victims. I don't mind Moffat stealing from himself, and I don't think you should either. No, this story just demonstrates the relative fabness of River Song. She's just great. Alright, everyone in the world knows that she's basically Bernice Summerfield. But I'm glad they didn't call her that, because that really would have left the original actress who played Bernice kind of annoyed. She could have turned up in the story and I would have been happy. But that doesn't drag you away from the fact that she's meeting the Doctor out of order and she's got that fab blue book. On the subject of which, if you want your own little blue book just like River Song, the BBC website have a downloadable PDF that you can print out and then stick around any book you care to mention. I, for one, would do it to a copy of, the Discontinuity Guide. Anyway, you've got a list of the Doctor's adventures with a lovely jacket. Of course, being a Doctor Who fan, you'll probably want to take it along to some sort of leather manufacturers and have it made into a proper book binding, and I'm digressing, I am rambling. Moving on. Actually, before I talk about the second episode, can I just talk about, and this isn't a news section, you know my rules on such things, this month's episode of Doctor Who magazine. Apart from the fantastic news for Sarah Jane Smith fans that the current Doctor is to appear in an episode, the same episode's also going to have Joe Grant in it, or Joe Jones, which will be great. That I'm pleased about. The thing I'm not so pleased about is the Silurian episode that's coming up. Yes, the Silurians are back, and they look nothing whatsoever like their original counterparts. I'm sure I'll rant and ramble about that much later. But do you get the feeling that all this redesigning is merely just, I don't know, an advert for toys? There was an episode of Dinosaurs years ago where the mother dinosaur turns to the baby and says, "How long is this commercial?" And they go, "Not a commercial, TV programme." I know Star Wars is basically one big long toy advert, but when did Doctor Who get to be the same? After all, I'm sure that would be product endorsement or product placement, and isn't that against the BBC's guidelines? No, it just has a feel that this whole thing's got a merchandisey feel to it. But, as always, the Silurians were a classic monster. I just hope they sound a little bit different as well. I always had trouble working out what they were saying during those Pertwee stories. Anyway, let's talk about this, part 2.
Do not blink.
What's happening to me? Doctor, it's coming, I can feel it.
If you open your eyes now for more than a second, you will die.
That's like the crack from my bedroom wall when I was a little girl.
That's extremely very not good. The power's failing.
We're surrounded.
In the dark, we're finished.
On my count then. 3, 2, 1. Fire!
Keep your eyes shut and keep moving. You have to do this.
It's never gonna work.
What else have you got?
We're not leaving without you.
Oh, yes, you are.
Doctor, come on!
The Treeborgs. Aren't they mints, or a type of beer that was popular in the 80s? They're a very, very nice idea. Now, because this story is another 45 minutes, alright, 42 minutes for the pedantic amongst us, this basically ends up coming in about an hour and a half, which is roughly what an old Doctor Who story used to come in at. Which means you have the whole episode 3 padding and episode 4 finale. And if you look at it that way, this story actually does fit together almost perfectly into classic Who structuring. It's got some cracking moments. Just like the first episode, it's very, very quotable. The Angel in the Eye, yes, again, more film references. That thing with the video in part 1, yes, it's straight from The Ring, but it worked so well, let's not even question it. No, the dull padding bit for me is, well, when the crack rears its head, and that's very brave. It proves that the monster really isn't the crack. The crack is just some part of it, a part of the end game that the series will come about. It's like having the revelation that the crack's there so much earlier in the season. It's a very brave and I think quite impressive move, because everyone knew the crack was coming, but it was nice that the Doctor noticed it in episode 5 of the season, rather than see episode 11 or 12. Time is a fairly dull enemy, but it's kind of cool that it was removing people from existence. However, at the very end of the story, River Song is sucked up back to the prison. Now, the people that she went on the mission with didn't actually exist. They've never existed in time. So, there was only River Song being evacuated. Now, think about this. If you're in charge of sending someone who's a prisoner down to take out some angels, and then you look at your own records, you start questioning and going, shouldn't I have sent more men down rather than just let this woman go down by herself to sort this out? That's not very good planning. Perhaps the records of her being released in the first place would have to be altered. Time is a very odd creature, and I'm not quite sure how that works or fits in. I'm, of course, going to rant about the end sequence in a moment, but I don't want to get there just yet, because there are some superb moments in this episode. The angels' movement is wonderfully choreographed. It's nice to see them move ever so slowly. The business with her having to keep her eyes closed worked so well. Yes, the ship's on its side. Yes, you can kind of figure out what's going to happen. But the angels are just great. They are so iconic, so wonderful. They will come back. I just wish that the Clockwork Men would come back from the Madame Pompadour, but I really can't see how that could happen. And so, before we journey back to Earth for the bit we all need to rant about, River tells him that she's there for the Pandoric opening, which means she'll be there at the end of the season, which means the end of the season's already been shot, and she really should have recognised the Doctor in the first place. That business with, I killed the best man I knew, just implies that she's the one responsible for killing the Doctor, possibly at the end of this life. Possibly not. But the thing that is worthy of note, before I start ranting, is that the date when the crack first appears is the 26th of the 6th, 2010. Now, I've looked at a calendar, and that is precisely 13 weeks from the beginning of the season, which more importantly means that if the 26th of the 10th, 2010 is the date of the last episode being broadcast, that means, and I like this, Eurovision does not interfere with the broadcast run. Doctor Who will be shown immediately before the Eurovision Song Contest. There won't be a week out, and we'll all be okay. My maths could be incorrect, but I thought it was nice and we could relax a bit more about it. And so, as I plummet towards the end of this story, and realise I've been recording for a very long time, we end up with two things worthy of mentioning. 1. The Doctor's age. 907. No, he should be a lot more than that. I really don't understand it. Move on. I just want them to sort that out. Now, the end bit, where Amy throws herself at the Doctor, jarred so much that it just stuck out like a sore thumb. Luckily, thanks to DVD recording technology, I can edit that out. But that's not important. I know it's there. No. It just felt like a combination of Rose's worst behaviour and several others of the RTD business. It was a soap moment. Luckily, the Doctor was more Doctor-like than he's been for years and fought her off, and that we can be grateful for. In a sense, that's what the scene was for. It was to make us realise that the Doctor is a lot more Doctor-like than he's been, well, for the last 5 years. And so, with that, I'll fade away, just to thank everyone who's been buying things from the Tin Dog Podcast store. Mugs seem to be enormously popular. I'm getting emails from around the world of people listening to Victory of the Daleks and Creature from the Pits review while sipping gently their cups of very nice tea, not made by Daleks. As well as next time's review of The Vampire Story, I will very shortly be having a very in-depth talk about Chicks Dig Time Lords, a book I've enormously enjoyed, as well as about the textbook about the mythological impact of Doctor Who. There won't be a Whostrology included in this podcast, as it's already far too long for a TDP. But there will be one next time. So until then, be seeing you. You have been listening to the Tin Dog Podcast. Doctor Who and its associated shows are all trademark of the BBC. No infringement is intended. Contact us at tin-dog@hotmail.co.uk.